Hmm. So I think everything is working. Let's see. Do you have something there to drink during interview?
Yeah.
Yoram?
Yes.
So nice to see you, everyone. Welcome here in this interview with my dear guest, who is Yoram Hazony, Dr. Yoram Hazony. And we are going to continue today with our interview because if you watched the previous episode, we were discussing globalism, we were discussing nationalism, we were talking about patriotism, and we did not accomplish all questions from you. So this episode is about that we are going to accomplish that, just to answer your questions. So thank you very much, Doctor, for your time again. We really appreciate your time, and I'm very grateful. It's a great honor for me to be here with you. So can we hear each other well? Can you hear me well, properly? Is
Yes.
everything working?
Thank you, Thomas. It's my pleasure to be here. Pleasure to be speaking to the Czech audience.
Thank you very much. So let me say some words in Czech for the audience first, and we will continue afterwards. Zdravím vás tady všechny, milí diváci a sledovatelé. Jsem tady dnes znovu s hostem z Izraele. Yoram Hazony je dnešním diskutujícím společně se mnou a chceme vám opravdu upřímně moc poděkovat za každé sdílení dál. Toto je opravdu výjimečná příležitost, kdy si můžeme možná dokonce i poprvé poslechnout v takovém českém rozhovoru právě zmíněnou osobnost. Já vám za chvilku Yorama představím v angličtině, předtím vás chci požádat tedy o sdílení, pokud možno třeba i o vaše komentáře, aby jsme tady vytvořili debatu o globalismu, o nacionalismu, o vlastenectví. Já vím, že to je citlivé téma v aktuální době, protože v České republice probíhá situace, která probíhá, máme demonstrace, zároveň také máme vládu, která se hájí nebo jeví, že je v nestandardní situaci, ať už z pohledu rusko-ukrajinského konfliktu nebo z pohledu ekonomické krize. Takže se v nás otevírají různá témata. Máme zde lidi, kteří opravdu třeba hájí teďka právě aktuální vládu a lidé, kteří kritizují. Já bych přesto rád tento rozhovor věnoval vyšším principům a vašim otázkám. Znovu jste otázky pokládali vy v uzavřené skupině na Facebooku Zákony bohatství, za což vám děkuju. Pokud chcete i jiné hosty do budoucna, tak samozřejmě nominujte je právě v této skupině. Jinak odkazy na mého hosta najdete dole pod tímto videem. Naleznete tam také jeho knihy, které jsou přeloženy nově do češtiny, takže pokud vás to zajímá, tak určitě mrkněte, já vám knihy doporučuji, já sám jsem začal číst v angličtině, originální, a je to opravdu skvěle napsané, takže moje upřímné doporučení k vám tuto knihu si pořídit a třeba se dozvědět něco nového, pokud vás to láká. V neposlední řadě tam také najdete odkaz na besedu v Praze, kterou pořádám se svými hosty naživo. Jsou to hosté z minulého roku, kteří měli vaši velkou oblíbenost, tak jsem je pozval, někteří z nich přijali. Nyní je to přes 12 osobností. Mrkněte a pokud se chcete potkat, tak přijďte. Děkuju moc. Nyní budu pokračovat dál v angličtině, vy můžete sledovat titulky. So thank you very much, Yoram, for your patience with that. I told the audience about the books you wrote, that they are newly in a Czech language, so they can buy them. I put the link below the video. And so now we can continue. Let me introduce you really briefly for the audience. So Dr. Yoram Hazony is an Israeli-American philosopher and the author of international bestsellers, namely A Virtue of Nationalism or Conservatism, A Rediscovery, and many more. Philosopher, Bible scholar, and political theorist. He is also a president of the Herzl Institute in Jerusalem, significant organization. So Peter Drulak is not going to be here with us today because he's being very busy these days. So he sends a lot of regards to you, to the audience, and to you, Yoram. So would you add something, Yoram, about you? Something? What would you like to say more?
No, that's very good.
That's very good. Okay, let's start with the first questions for me. How are you? How is the life in Israel right now?
Life in Israel is wonderful. I'm speaking from my office in the attic of my home, right outside the city. And from the window, you can see the cranes rebuilding the ancient city of Jerusalem, and it's a wonderful place. Everyone should visit it.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm actually going to visit maybe this year, so I will let you know if it
Oh,
happens.
good. Let me know that you're coming. We'll have dinner.
Okay, thank you very much for that. So let's start with the questions for you. You will see them in Czech language, but feel comfortable. I will translate everything for you. So the first question is from Peter Křivan, and the question sounds: how strong is nationalism in Israel, or is it all more about religion?
Well, there's a few different questions there. The state of Israel is a classic national state. It's a super example from its founding of a nation whose purpose is of a state, of a country whose purpose is to allow the expression of a particular nation, a historic people. And that's always a mix of traditions and interests and aspirations and language and religion of the majority people. Of course, every national state also has minorities, and here too, each national state comes up with different ways of balancing the concerns of the national majority with national and religious minorities. So, for example, Israel has a separate school systems for each of the nationalities, so that Jews attend schools that are primarily for Jews and in the Hebrew language, and Arabs attend schools that are primarily in the Arabic language, whether schools for Muslims or schools for Christians. And of course, there are other minorities in Israel as well. So I would say that it's a mix, and it's always a mix. Just as the United Kingdom has an established Anglican church in England, but it has there's always been a Scottish church in Scotland, which is not the Anglican church, but something else. So this pattern is true for all national states, that they experiment with different legal and public provisions for both national and religious.
Thank you very much for answering. Next question for you is: what is the mood between Israel and Palestine now? And how do you see the situation around Al-Aqsa Mosque?
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure how to answer that. What is the mood? The mood is fine. I'm not sure that's that's the problem. I mean, that there's a legitimate contest of interests between between the Jewish people in the land of Israel and between various Arab peoples. In part, it's a it's an in principle argument about whether Jews have a right to have an independent nation in the Middle East. In part, it's a border dispute about where is the best place to put the borders between Israel as a Jewish nation and the Arab nations that surround us. And there are different views, and the argument is often legitimate, and often it spills into just unnecessary name calling, and it's going to continue like that for a while.
Thank you very much. Next question for you is: how does Soros Soros want to dominate world politics. What is your opinion about Soros?
Well, look, I don't know very much about Soros personally, so I don't really. I don't think I'm competent to go into discussing, him as a personality, but so certainly he has been involved in advancing many of the ideas that we discussed in the last episode. His organizations tend to support the elimination of borders and undermining national and religious independence of peoples, and that that makes him unpopular with conservatives in almost every country. The one thing that I think is important to emphasize is that it's sometimes we hear people on the left accusing people of anti-Semitism if they criticize Soros, and I think that's a mistake. I mean, there certainly are people who dislike Jews for all sorts of reasons, and but criticizing Soros is not a you don't have to be an anti-Semite to criticize Soros. I think almost every conservative or and nationalist in every country who is familiar with the activities of his organizations feels the need to criticize him, and I think that's perfectly reasonable and legitimate. Again, we need to learn to have arguments about conflicting principles and conflicting interests without sliding automatically into global accusations against entire groups and entire nations, which is not necessary.
I would like to ask you something. Like Mr. Soros, under many investigations in Europe, it was found that his non-profit companies tried to influence political situation in Europe in way supporting European Union. And we see in my country, in the Czech Republic, that many rich people, they own some media. They have money to influence politicians. It's nothing new that was happening in history. But nowadays, it seemed to be more dangerous in the way of war, diseases, how to cope with diseases, because we have pharma lobbyists and all these things. Do you think that how we can prevent these people from leaking into the politics? Do you think that there is any way what we can do, how we can just protect the the people from the shadow influence?
Well, look, you began by saying this is nothing new, and I agree with you. There, at all times and in all places in human history, there have been powerful people, powerful men, powerful individuals, groups of powerful individuals pursuing their interests and their vision of the way things should be. And I don't really think that that much has changed in that regard. I mean, to get anything done, you need financial support, and you need media support. You need the support of academics and other people who shape ideas, and you need the support of politicians and officials who are in a position to be able to make decisions. And all of these groups are always going to be, to one degree or another, under in alliance with and in dialogue with powerful men, powerful individuals for various reasons. Now, if the conservatives or the nationalists or the Christians gain influence and they become more powerful, and the globalists and the liberals and the European Union and these international organizations become weaker, then people will start complaining about the wealthy and powerful individuals who are allied with the conservatives. So I don't think that in general there's a way to solve the problem. It's a universal human problem, but it may be that in particular cases, the Hungarians decided that they didn't want to have a Soros-backed university in Hungary, so they took various steps in order to make it more difficult for Soros's university to function in Hungary, and eventually they got it to leave. Now, I don't think that Soros's involvement in politics is illegitimate, and I don't think it's illegitimate for the Orban government to say that this is a destructive influence and to try to take steps to prevent it. So I think it's difficult to come up with an argument in principle that says wealthy, powerful people should not have influence in a given country. Now, look, definitely it's unpleasant for a country like Czechia or Israel. We're in somewhat similar situation in which these are small countries. And it's because they're small countries, it's very easy for foreigners, not just foreign individuals, but foreign governments to help establish organizations that are funded to a significant degree by foreign money. And look, that's very unpleasant. It's unpleasant and difficult. On the one hand, we want to be a country that's devoted to freedom. On the other hand, we need to maintain our independence, and that's also an important value. So in Israel, there have been various legal steps that have been taken for example, requiring organizations that receive most of their money from overseas to declare it publicly, to have kind of like a label on their websites that says explicitly that that most of the funding for the organization comes from elsewhere. That's one kind of a proposal that's been discussed here, and you can come up with others. We don't want to be in a position of saying that it's illegal for foreigners to be involved in our public life, because that kind of a step not only is it a significant impediment to the free exchange of ideas, but beyond that means that you'll be preventing all sorts of good people from positive people from being involved, as well as negative people. So I think that these things, they need to be dealt with very, very carefully. And what I mean by carefully is that you want to take steps that are experimental to see whether things can improve under some of these circumstances. If you take a forceful steps against organizations that Soros or someone else is backing, you can sometimes get into negotiations with them in which you come to a mutual agreement in which they agree to restrain certain activities or to desist from certain activities in order to avoid legal consequences that they don't like. But the short answer, this has been a long answer. The short answer is we have to deal with these things practically on a case-by-case basis. You can't make a general statement that says that wealthy people can't be involved in your politics, because it's unenforceable. There's no way to actually stop it.
Thank you very much for describing. Yoram, next question for you is, it sounds, why do you think people are unable to learn from history?
Why are people unable to learn from history? Well, first of all, people sometimes do learn from history, but in general, human beings, and this is, if my new book in Czech, The Conservatism, a Rediscovery, goes deep into this question of how it is that different groups of people, how it is that they learn, to think, how all of us learn to think when we're growing up from the groups within which we're raised. Everybody is raised in a certain family, in a certain tribe, in a certain nation, in a certain religion, and none of us is perfectly objective. Even though some people definitely can break away from the way that they were raised and learn to think in another way. But whenever you see that someone breaks away from their own tradition, they always adopt a different tradition. They're almost never actually, completely free, completely independent thinkers, the way that the liberals like us to think. And so part of this difficulty of being human is that when you grow up in a certain group, in a certain nation or tribe or religion, you learn to see history in a particular way. So an example that I discuss in The Virtue of Nationalism, which is the previous book, an example that I discuss is the way that the Holocaust and the concentration camps are treated in Israel is very, very different from the way that they're treated in various places in Europe. When most Jews look at World War II and the Holocaust, the lesson that most Jews have drawn from it is that weakness is a mistake. That it's a mistake to be disarmed. That the reason it's important to have a Jewish army and Jewish security services is because the world it can be, really a terrible place, and being too weak to defend your own children is a mistake. People have an obligation to defend their children and their people, and that means that you have to organize yourself to have power and to wield power, even though wielding power, is not always pretty, and you can't always avoid making mistakes with it. Still, it's necessary. So that's that's the view that most Jews after the World War II adopted, and that's among the reasons for the strong Jewish and also Christian support for the state of Israel. But there are many people in Europe, especially in Germany, but in other places as well, who have learned the exact opposite lesson. They look at the concentration camps and they say, well, what was the cause of this? Well, the cause was that Germany was an independent country, and having national independence means that you have the power to do evil, and so they oppose Israel, and they oppose all independent nations. They oppose Israel as an example of an independent nation, and they say, look, we should have a European government or a world government. Why? In order to make sure that that evil isn't done in the world. The claim is that that the Germans will be restrained from doing evil because they'll be part of this international European Union. So here you have two exact opposite historical lessons being learned from the same exact events. We're not disagreeing about the facts, about the number of people who were killed or who killed them or how. We're not disagreeing about the facts. We're disagreeing about how you should learn from history. Now, I think that one of these interpretations is closer to the truth, that it's more realistic, and that the other one is farther from the truth. It's utopian and it's based on fantastic reasoning. I think that everywhere where peoples are persecuted, take the Kurds as an example that's familiar to people today. There are 30 million Kurds in Turkey and Iraq and Iran and Syria, and that's a very large number of people who've been persecuted for centuries and continue to be tormented and often to be killed and to have their traditions suppressed by various hostile governments. And I think that you can see that things are in general better for the Kurds, although it's you can interpret this different ways as well. But in general, I think things are better for the Kurds because they're armed, because they've armed themselves. I think things will be better for the Kurds if they're able to gain greater power and greater authority, and that national independence, in my opinion, would be the best for them. But so I think that there is such a general principle that you can learn from the Holocaust, that to gain power to defend your own people is, it's an important moral and political obligation. On the other hand, the argument that says, the Holocaust occurred because the Germans had too much freedom. I think it's being used in order to advance imperial aspirations, empire, aspirations of creating an empire in Europe that's going to be in the end a German-dominated empire. So I think it's a mistake to claim that the proper lesson is that there shouldn't be independent nations. I think empires are at least as dangerous and probably more dangerous than independent nations. But in the end, as well as I do that people learn different things from history. Different groups learn different things from history. And it's going to take a long time until the true lessons are recognized and the false lessons are recognized as being false. This is a fight that we all fight every day. Again, this is very similar to your question about preventing wealthy people from having influence. Wealthy people have an influence because that's human nature. And the same thing is true about the historical lessons that we draw, that it's human nature to draw historical lessons that support the views that we grew up with. That's, that each of us grows up with certain historical narratives. And that doesn't mean there isn't truth. That there is truth. There are true facts and false facts. And even in terms of interpretation and values, in the end, there is a truth about which of these values are good for human beings and which ones are not so good for human beings. But but you have to be realistic about these things. It is always a struggle to bring the truth and justice into the world, and human beings are not reasonable, and they don't immediately recognize the truth just because you're presenting it, and they don't immediately adopt decent and humane values just because you're presenting it. But that's let's look at this positively. If human beings simply could just find the truth and the right values easily, then there wouldn't be much challenge to life, and that's our challenge, is to fight for the things that we think are right, and God willing, to succeed.
Thank you very much for sharing your opinions with us. And next question for you is from Robin. Does the USA control world politics, including the European Union, or is the USA also, according to you, controlled by globalists in the background?
Yeah, well, that's also complicated. For those people who saw last week's discussion, you'll remember that Peter was emphasizing that there's no central governing locus of power for the globalists, and that's definitely true to a degree. The European Union is a locus of power. Brussels and Berlin are definitely centers of such power, and Washington is and New York are also centers of such power. And you can name other centers, and to a certain extent, they compete with one another. They don't, the globalist political movement, the liberal internationalism, includes many people who are struggling for influence, and so some of them are when we look at this, we can sometimes see things that look like American domination and control. Right? The decision to invade Iraq and Afghanistan and Bosnia and Somalia, those decisions were made primarily in Washington, and they're made primarily in Washington because most of the military power is in Washington. On the other hand, the spread of international law that's an academic enterprise. The claim that there's such a thing as binding international law, the decisions about what is the content of this international law, these are decisions that are made primarily by academics. They're made by professors, and who train, they train law students, and the law students then become judges, and the judges seem to be making the decisions, but in fact, there's kind of an international legal movement of international lawyers and judges and professors who together discuss and decide what the substance of international law is, and then that substance is explained, to the American government and to American officials and to American soldiers, and many of them then think that they need to do what the European judges are telling them to do, because this is supposedly the content of the law. So there's a competition among liberal internationalist political figures, liberal internationalist intellectuals, and also more and more neo-Marxist intellectuals and political figures who are taking over. They've overtaken the centers of intellectual power and moved them in a progressive direction away from classical liberalism, traditional liberalism, and towards something that looks much more like neo-Marxism. And that's also an internal debate that's taking place among globalists. How far should the globalist movement move in the direction of progressivism or woke neo-Marxism? So there is no simple answer. There is such a thing as a liberal internationalist movement. It is extremely influential in the current American administration and in the European Union bureaucracy. Sometimes it's less influential in America. Under the Trump administration, it was less influential. It may become less influential again in the future, but at the moment, it's a friendly competition among different streams of globalists to determine what is the content going to be. And I don't think either the Americans or the Europeans are clearly dominant.
Thank you very much for your answers, Yoram. The next question for you is, what do you really think of the World Economic Forum and Klaus Schwab? Is he really the puppet of someone, or you think that he has his own ideas not given from someone?
No, nobody has his own ideas not given from someone. I mean, even people who have, very strong personalities and powerful egos and write many books and go around and teach people and have a huge influence. Even those people are influenced by the people around them. To be a truly a truly original thinker is extremely rare, and even the most original thinkers are still influenced by other things. So I don't think that the word puppet is terribly helpful here. Klaus Schwab is a significant player. He doesn't have real political power. He's not, the head of a country. He's not the president or the king of some country, but his organization has a great deal of influence. Powerful people come and meet at his conferences. He determines what the agenda is. He determines, together with his Israeli sidekick, Yuval Noah Harari, who is he's an Israeli professor who is has some of the best-selling books in the world, and he uses his platform in order to advance fantasies about the end of the end of nations and the end of human beings, and the whole utopian worldview that Schwab and Harari together are advancing through this platform. It's very influential. It has a very big effect on many people, including powerful people. And so, no, I wouldn't see them as puppets at all. I see them as significant actors who are growing more powerful, and they need to be challenged and exposed, and their ideas refuted, just in the same way as anybody else who's a significant player in this drama between globalism and nationalism.
Do you think that their visions are dangerous in some way? Do you feel them as toxic?
I don't like the word toxic because I think it's it's one of those words like you're an anti-Semite, you're a fascist, you're toxic. These are words that are mostly, not always, but they're mostly just used in order to make people hate somebody rather than to think about the ideas that are involved. I think that these ideas are important and influential. They are wrong in some respects. I would even say that they're evil. I mean, when you hear Harari saying that the future is the immediate future is going to be the manufacturing of human bodies and human brains, and that this is going to create kind of a super race, and the main question is going to be what to do with the majority of people who do not have these advanced ultra modern brains and bodies. And I think that they are also looking forward to these wealthy, powerful elites being immortal. So they are really describing transforming some part of mankind into gods. And in Judaism, this has always been, we've been familiar with this again always. Pharaoh was supposed to be a god. And he was like a god because he was so powerful that he could destroy entire cities just by making a decision. They could divert the waters of the Nile from a town or a city and kill everyone in it, and without much difficulty. And so Pharaoh was treated as a god. And still, the Jewish view, which was then adopted by Christianity, the Jewish view is that this is idolatry, that it is evil to start thinking about certain human beings as though they are gods, and to treat them as like gods, and then to treat the rest of human beings as though they are something terribly inferior. And when Harari talks about the majority of humanity, that he sees drugs and video games as the answer for what to do with the rest of humanity. And seriously, I don't think in my life I've ever heard a Jew speaking with this contempt, because from a Jewish or a Christian perspective, all human beings are created in the image of God. And so even if we're not exactly equal in different ways, nevertheless, every human being has inherent value. And these kind of ideas that value certain human beings, certain classes, an elite class of human beings, while speaking with contempt about all the rest of mankind, I think it's fair to call this idolatry. I think it's fair to say that it is evil, and we're going to have to learn how to fight it, because it's more and more influential. And those of us who feel deeply that it's important to fight these ideas and to eliminate their influence to whatever degree possible, those of us who feel that, we are not in the majority right now. It's not the books about nationalism and conservatism, or even about Judaism and Christianity. These are not the books that are promoted by all of the media and turned into national bestsellers most of the time. And the same thing is true for, Hollywood makes movies that support these ideas, and they very rarely make movies anymore that have a conservative or a nationalist influence, although they used to. So we are in a tough spot, and but we are going to have to fight these ideas. I think absolutely everything that is important and of value is at stake. And it'll be a pleasure to hear from people who have ideas about how my views on this can be improved.
Thank you very much for your answers. Guys, what do you think? Write us your opinion about this below, down under the video. And also, if you want to just support some nationalism thinking, you can read the book written by Yoram Hazony. I put it down below the video because, in my country, doctor is being very, very touchy topic right now because many people observe the World Economic Forum right now and they are scared. They are literally scared because the plans sound crazy, but they have many people who are for it, like who support that thinking. So guys, what do you think about it? Maybe you are for some reasons. Write it down. Maybe you're against. Write down your opinion. You're very welcome, and thank you very much for that. So next question for you is written by Natka Hensovska. Is why are you not participating in the European Parliament activities with Mr. Terhes and other colleagues regarding the COVID fraud investigation?
Well, I don't participate in any parliamentary activities in Europe. I don't live in Europe. I don't vote in Europe, and I'm not a representative of any political movement in Europe. So I'm not really sure what to say, except that I think it's reasonable for people from other countries who are nationalists or conservatives to do what we're doing right now, to use public channels of communication in order to try to learn about nationalism and conservatism and anti-liberal and anti-globalist ideas. And I do my best to travel to Europe when I'm invited and when people bring me. I'll be in Italy next week. One of my books is appearing in Italian, and in Poland in a few weeks, a different book is appearing in Polish. And we have a big national conservatism conference from in the UK and Britain, May 15th through 17th. You can go to the website natcon.org, nationalconservatism.org, and sign up and come and attend the conference. And I'll be there, and I don't have any hesitation about presenting my ideas and helping people try to move forward in conservative and nationalist and religious thinking. But I don't get involved in directly in the politics of European nations.
Maybe many people would like to see you there these days.
Thank you.
So, next question, written by Hanna Schwarzova. What do you think about the situation where the European Union invests in non-profit organizations operating in Israel, but at the same time speaking out against Israelis? Why do you think this is happening?
Well, this is related to the question we were talking about Soros and wealthy individuals before. So now we're talking about the same question, but with respect to wealthy and powerful organizations. And as I said before, it's very, very difficult to be any country, but especially a small country, which finds it difficult. Israel, like Czechia, like Hungary, like any small country, does not want to be in direct confrontation with more powerful players. We prefer not to be in direct confrontation with the European Union, we prefer not to be in direct confrontation with the United States and with China and with Russia and with India. I mean, these are very important global players, and they can affect the future of our country to a great degree. When it's necessary, then of course we will fight even a much more powerful opponent if we have to. But in general, we try to avoid it. So that means that the European Union can, as the questioner suggested, has the ability to channel European money into Israel to support organizations, even to create organizations that are fundamentally hostile to Israel's character, to its constitutional character as the state of the Jewish people, to its laws, to its to Israel's security apparatus. Israel's an independent country. We make our own decisions about what our laws are going to be, what our constitution is going to be, and what we must do in order to protect our people. And of course, not everybody has to agree with the decisions that we make, but it becomes uncomfortable when Europe, which is a major trade partner and a major diplomatic power, takes sides internally against the mainstream political ideas in Israel in order to try to turn Israel into a European style liberal democracy. Israel is not, I don't think, is ever going to be a European style liberal democracy. Both because it's difficult to reconcile that with Judaism. It's difficult to reconcile with that also with living in a security environment in which there are constant, very real military and security threats that we have to deal with. So our view of things is not going to be the same as the view of someone who's sitting in Brussels and doesn't have to think about these issues. But a balance has to be found. Israel is looking for that balance, and Czechia will look for that balance, just like all other small countries. We in part, it's an actual negotiation that takes place behind the scenes, where we protest, and the Europeans occasionally they fix things and make things better in order to not have a big ugly public fight. But in the end, we definitely have a significant problem. The Europeans do not want Israel to be a Jewish state. They don't want Israel to be an independent state. They don't believe in independent national states. So and sometimes they say it explicitly. So there are many things about Israel that Europeans don't like. My hope is actually that as Europe becomes more realistic, that as European nations reassert themselves, that more and more people, on the European right, I think will say what they often say to me already, which is that our country, our nation is in many ways in the same kind of situation that Israel is in, and many Europeans now on the right see Israel as a model of a country that is thriving. It's thriving economically. It's thriving in terms of its population, in terms of its public culture. And in many ways, Israel is a stronger nation with every passing year. And that is despite the fact that the Europeans oppose the idea of an independent national state, and they oppose the idea of a Jewish state. So we can, Israelis, I think, can in some ways help European nations find again their own independence and their own independent way according to their own interests and traditions. And maybe someday the European Union will really be more like a Europe of independent nations, an alliance of independent nations, and then Europe will get along with Israel much better.
Thank you again for your answers. The last question for you about your opinion, Yoram, is here. It's written by Tommy. Who do you think has the biggest profit in Ukraine right now?
I don't have, I don't have the kind of information to actually be able to answer the question of exactly who is profiting and who is profiting the most. But I would say about Ukraine, continuing the conversation from last time, that that there are different interests here. There are the biggest interest at the moment seems to be the interest of liberal internationalism. That was not obvious when the war began, because Russia is an imperialist power. It has been for centuries. That continues to be its official worldview. If you read speeches by Putin is not a nationalist. He thinks nationalists are Nazis, and he sees the Russian Federation as an empire with many different nations that it's responsible for. So it could have been when Russia invaded that it would have been seen clearly as a war between Russian imperialism and Ukrainian nationalism, the desire of the Ukrainian nationalists for independence. Strangely, that's not the way that the war is seen. It's seen primarily, both in Washington and in Brussels. It's seen primarily as a war between liberalism and authoritarianism, which I think is ridiculous. I mean, I think it makes no sense, because Ukraine has never been a liberal country, and I don't know if it ever will be a liberal country. But the liberal internationalists believe that by fighting these kinds of wars to expand the borders of liberalism, that they believe that they strengthen themselves. Now, they already did this in Iraq, and I think they did not strengthen themselves. And they did this in Afghanistan, and I do not think they strengthened themselves. And I don't think they're strengthening themselves in the Ukraine either. I think it's a mirage to think that by pouring all this money and weaponry into the Ukraine, that America and Europe are becoming stronger. But that's obviously they don't agree. And for the way I see it, the only power that's really gaining from the Europeans and America fighting with Russia, the power that's really gaining, the only power that's gaining, is China. And you can see that as the war goes on, China grows in its strength and its influence. Its influence has grown significantly, not only in Russia but in Turkey, in Iran, in the Middle East in general, in Saudi Arabia. Its influence has grown in Africa and in South America. Its influence is also growing in the United States. And I'm most worried about the fact that China, which has really a terrible form of government, is growing stronger, while all the democracies are destroying themselves. I mean, they're not just destroying themselves because of Ukraine. That's not the central issue. The central issue really is liberalism and neo-Marxism. But Ukraine is part of this picture that it unfortunately, and I say this with great trepidation. Unfortunately, it seems that the great American and European powers are on a trajectory to destroy themselves, and that won't be good for anybody.
Says Yoram Hazony, Dr. Yoram Hazony. Thank you very much for your time again. And it's a great opportunity having you here. Thank you again. And thank all of you guys who are here with us and sharing this interview. Maybe to your friends, maybe on your social media. We are very grateful for that. Thanks to you, we can spread these ideas and support the discussion, which is below this video. Thank you very much for that. I'm thankful for every comment here. For maybe you agree, maybe you disagree. It's okay. Just I would like to say, be very friendly, with each other. It's only discussion, and it has some, you cannot be always on the same level, but you can be very respectful to each other. Thank you very much for that, and subscribe if you're new here. That you will see next videos or new interviews I'm planning to do for you. Below this video, you also can find links. Now, Yoram Hazony has a new book translated into the Czech language. So for me, I'm reading that right now in English because I'm not in Czech Republic. So you can have it easily in Czech. So no obligations. Buy this book if you feel that way, and let me know how you like it. I'm very interested in your opinions. We can share our ideas about this book, and also you can find below some events I'm planning for you. I think that the doctor mentioned here his event as well, so I hope you will send me that on email, Yoram, and I will put it below as well. Yeah. You're welcome. You're very welcome. So, do you have something? Would you add something at the end of this interview?
Sure. Look, the important thing to add is that it is very difficult for human beings to see the future. And even though, I admit that the trends, the trajectories are, they don't look good. But don't forget that, nobody saw almost no one saw the collapse of the Soviet Union in the 1980s, and almost nobody saw the return, foresaw the return of nationalism. Almost nobody predicted Donald Trump in America and Brexit in Britain, and nobody foresaw the economic collapse in 2008. I mean, we're just terrible at foreseeing the future. So I would say that should give us actually hope, because when you look at things and you say, well, look, all of these terrible ideas are getting stronger, and our rivals are getting stronger, and what can we do? Well, the answer is that there's an Israeli army saying, in the Israeli army, they say, the officers say, don't forget, it's raining on the other side too. And they look very powerful and they look unbeatable sometimes, but they're not unbeatable. And the human spirit, with a little bit of help from God, can make vast and surprising changes for the better. And the important thing is that each of you read materials that are not they're not the things that the liberal media are talking about. They're not the things that the liberal academia is studying. Read other things and try as much as you can to develop your own nationality, your own religion, your connection to the traditions of your own people. An important part of this is to get married and to have children, to get married early and to have many children, and to send them, even if you yourself, even if you're not you don't know what you think about Christianity or Judaism or the Bible. It's very important that your children be raised in an environment where these things are familiar to them instead of completely alien. And God willing, I think there are many good things happening underneath the surface, and we have a good chance of prevailing in the end.
Thank you very much again. And thanks you guys for sharing this, and see you in next interviews.
Okay, take care.